Hi, it's Angie, and this is Midlife Magic and Mayhem. It's uncommon conversations like this one that inspired me to start this show. Today, I speak to sexological bodyworker and sex and intimacy coach Connie Eberhart. You can find more about Connie at her website, embodypleasure.org. I first met Connie in 2019 at an event in Costa Rica when I was working with world-renowned somatic sex educator Jaiya as a private client for that entire year. Jaiya was one of the facilitators in the Netflix series Sex, Love, and Goop. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching it. Connie is a master trainer for Jaiya and was a facilitator at that Costa Rica event. In this discussion, Connie and I explore many areas of pleasure, sexuality, presence, the nervous system, sexuality and spirituality, and why all of this is important. What does sex have to do with anything anyway, right? It's just sex. Well, that's what I used to think. And there is so much more available. Connie has an impressive array of trainings and certifications in consent, embodiment, somatic sex education, sexological bodywork, kink, Bondassage, scar tissue remediation, and too many more to count. She is a wealth of knowledge and one of the truest, dearest humans out there. So sit back, tune into yourself, and enjoy this conversation with Connie Eberhart. Hello, Connie. Welcome
Hi,
to the
Angie.
show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is my pleasure.
And that's what I'm all about, is pleasure.
So exciting to have you here. Thank you again for your time.
Yeah.
I would love to start by asking you, which is how I usually start most of these, where are you right now? Like physically, where are you and what do you see?
Mm, Well, physically, I'm in my office where we have, the Zoom room, but I have the door open and the window out there, it shows the snow and the beautiful sunshine. And I can keep just looking up there and like feeling the outside and the inside here. So just enjoying this beautiful, sunny, wintry day.
It is wintry here in Boulder, Colorado, isn't it?
Yes.
Beautiful. That's one of
Yeah.
the things I love about living here is that you do get such clear four seasons and there is winter, but yet the sun shines all the time, which
Yes,
is
very important for me.
super important for me.
Yeah.
Well, great. So I would love to start with your story. And you are a sexological body worker and
Yeah.
sex and intimacy coach. And we can
Mhm.
talk a little bit later about how I know you, but I'd love to hear your story and kind of how you wove yourself into this world and this work.
Yeah. It found me. I mean, I would have never guessed, so like one of my mentors, Jaiya, you'll learn here more later, but she's like, at 4 years old, I knew I wanted to teach about sex and, so many people. But for me, I knew um, college was marketing management, not a consumer, not interested, got out of that immediately. And so that was in my 20s. It was all about personal growth and wellness and transformation and experiential education and all the things. And that kind of has a limited lifespan of our, you kind of age out of doing that. It's like, how am I going to tie all these things together and really make a living? I was in conscious evolution and, the landmark and the est and all those things. And then, kind of like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And so I ended up moving with a boyfriend and what am I going to do for a job? And I started working with a personal lubricant marketing. Okay, go back to my roots of marketing. And it was I can stand behind a personal lubricant, organic. And so I got sent to Jaiya's public birthday party and radio or book launch to bring the lube because I work for the lube company. And that's also where I was talking about sexuality and understanding how can we be talking about personal growth and transformation and conscious evolution, yet sex is this taboo in this area we can't touch. And then I met Jaiya and started learning about what she does. It was still like, what do you do in your sessions? And, I've just been kind of mentored by her ever since 2013. So I slowly started, getting certified as a sexological body worker. I, Bondassage. So I also do kink. And then the blueprints came along, and I'm kind of addicted to all these trainings because I just love learning. So I really just stumbled into it, and everything, I keep finding the connection of everything. And sex is kind of the cornerstone of it. Or, I mean, until we look at that, we're not really getting to the depth of who we are and what makes us alive and move, or even where our fears are. So I don't know if that, hopefully that answered your question. I tend to like jump around a lot, even with that question.
Well, yeah, it's fantastic. And just to give a little bit more context about how you and I even know each other, I worked with Jaiya, the Jaiya that you're speaking of, in 2019. I was a VIP client one-on-one of hers for that whole year. And we were actually, it's funny because I was on her website one random day, and this is actually before you and I met,
Yeah.
and was looking, I was like, oh wait, she has coaches too. And da 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 da. And I just looked at all the different blueprint coaches, and I saw you and was immediately resonant with you and your
Mm.
energy. And I was like, oh wow. And so I went through the rabbit hole and looked at your website and all that kind of stuff. And then I was at an event, one of Jaiya's events down in Costa Rica, and met you in person. And I remember at one point, this was after a demonstration at the event, you were standing outside with another woman that was there. And I walked up to both of you and I said, "You're my new hero."
To
You were,
me?
it was you and Kismet. Yeah. I was like,
Ah!
I had just seen something that was extraordinarily beautiful that I had no idea existed in the world in the way that it was presented with such depth and beauty. It was a demonstration with
Mm.
Orpheus with such depth and beauty and care and tenderness and power and all of this wrapped into one. And I was like, holy shit, what is that? And I want more of it. So
Ah, I never knew that. That's
yes,
exciting.
absolutely. So yeah, so that's how you and I met. And then, all of this work has just been so important for me in my own growth. And like I
Mhm.
tell people, like you were just saying, you can't talk about wellness without talking about sex. You
If
can't.
if you're not, you're missing some. There's something you're
Huge.
afraid to talk about, or yeah,
It's such an important place to look. Like the way I tell people is like I had walked down the path and picked up all the rocks of like health and green smoothies and meditation and yoga and this and that and nutrition and all things, which are all amazing and
yeah,
fabulous.
yeah,
And I would walk by the sex rock and I'd look at it and I'd go, I'll do that later. Nah, it's not important, right? Frivolous.
yeah,
And so, but it has been the place for me in my life to look and to uncover and to unlearn all of the programming. Not all, I mean, I'm still very much in the work. I mean, it's never ending.
yeah.
Um, but it's such an impactful place and there's so much around it.
Yes, yes. It's not just techniques and tools and expansion. It at all. It's not just have more of it or just do it. It's
Yeah.
yeah. It's
So
big. It's rich.
exactly. So let's talk about that because I know, if someone hears sexological bodywork or somatic sex education or any of this stuff, or see Jaiya on the Sex Love and Goop on Netflix, right?
Yes,
Which
that was
was great.
great.
It
If
was
you
such a
haven't
great
seen
show.
it, go see it.
Yep. I'll probably link to it in the show notes. Um, so, and I think we can all sort of fall into this place of thinking like, oh, have better sex, more techniques, more tools, more tricks, more blah, 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 blah. But, you know, again, there's just so much more around it. So I'd love for you to kind of paint that broader picture. I mean, there's no way to get
Yeah,
to all of it, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
paint the broader picture for us of what's possible in this domain.
yeah. Well, first, meeting and knowing yourself. And that's, I mean, when we look at touch or desires or intimacy or connection, well, first with ourselves and then with another, I mean, that's where the core of our desires, our longings, um, how even just regulation of my nervous system, that I can be present, I can feel sensation, I can be present to what is, and then with another person. So I have to do my own work first, and then I can do a work with another person. But for me, the other person also has to be doing work, or recognizing that there's discovery to do and curiosity, not just like doing the things. So it's just such an area of personal growth and aliveness. How do I find and tap into my aliveness? And I can
Mhm,
guarantee, if
mhm.
we have any shame or fear or boundary violations in the past, which we all have. I mean, you cannot grow up in this culture around touch and sexuality, and not have some type of boundary crossing, even our own.
Mm.
Like I, we might say yes when we mean no, or say yes and think just I need to do this. I love him, he loves me, or her, or whoever the person is, and override our own boundaries. So it's just looking at all of that, and it can be fun too.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. That's one of the things that I've learned a lot about is that piece of looking at your own boundaries. And especially like I grew up a good Southern girl in the Southeastern United States. And let me tell you, girls should and shouldn't do and shouldn't be certain ways. Right. And not to
Hmm.
like slam the South. I mean, I love the South, but I mean, this happens
That was
anywhere.
your experience.
That was
Yeah.
my experience. But it really is, that voice in my own head of like, no, no, no. And if someone like crossing that boundary of, I should say yes, I should say no, I shouldn't like that, that's bad, this is good. That whole narrative that gets installed into us like a
Yeah.
computer program, and we don't even realize it's running
Yeah.
until we start to go to the places that we think are taboo and peek under those covers and be like, wait a minute, this is happening here. It's happening everywhere. Look at all the other places in my life where I'm enduring, where I'm
Yes.
going with something that I don't really want just because that's what should happen. Right.
Hmm.
Um, I would also love to speak about presence. You were just talking about presence.
Hmm.
So, especially in intimacy in any form, what what does presence do for our intimate life? Like what's the importance there? And yeah, just speak to that. What's the importance of
Yeah.
presence in our intimate life?
Hmm. Well, first, presence gets me, or us, out of my head. If I'm present, I am present to what is right here and right now. And something might bring me out to a memory or a thought or a belief or something, but can I come back to this present moment? And first, acknowledge or be aware of something that pops me out, but coming back to present, like breath is always in the present moment. So can I come back to my breath? And breath helps me if I'm engaging or receiving from myself or another some type of sensation. Can I be present to that sensation? Can my breath expand that sensation?
Say
And
more
so,
about that because I think people can, because I know people have asked me these questions, right? How do I
mhm,
do that? What do you mean presence in my with myself? Like even if I'm touching my arm, or if
mhm,
my partner or another human is giving me touch, and it could just be as simple as a finger stroke on the arm. What does being present with that touch mean, or what does it look like? I guess what I'm asking is, what's the sensation, what's the impact of that?
yeah. Well, kind of a place I'd like to, a practice give to people. And Betty Martin's awesome, bettymartin.com. So many
Hmm.
free videos and resources there. But she has one video, the power of presence or pleasure in your hands, because we take away the other person, or even um, what we feel about touching our own body. So just an object, I can take an object, and can I be present to what I'm feeling? Or
Mm,
is my head going to pop out and go here and go here? Nope, come back. noticing the texture. And can I breathe? Am I breathing? And so can I be present to sensation? So I'm not worried about what the other person or what because I mean, what can I think about, touching an object? And so that's a place to practice. Can I stay present to what I'm taking in as information from touch to my brain?
That's so
And
good. And I love Betty Martin, by the way. Yeah.
yes. And then I can do it with myself. We're all generally putting on lotion or oil after the shower. Can I be present and love what any sensation? And can I breathe? And you notice the sensation of the texture of my touch and just being and that's where we can pop out too. Like I said, some beliefs could come in.
Mm.
And so we just keep practicing. Can I keep coming back to present moment, to my breath, to any sensations or emotions I'm noticing, and be with that?
Yeah. I think a good practice too with that, like going back to this touch, is using the hands example. And if we still have questions about like, okay, well, I'm present to touch. Well, get really granular about it. Get really curious and really granular and specific. Like, okay, what's the temperature of my skin? Is it
Yeah,
soft? Is it slick? Is it wet? Is it dry? Is it cold? Is it hot? Just get really, really specific and granular and
yeah,
curious. And then that can help to dive deeper into this sensation and into that presence that you're talking about, and really learn how to receive through the hands, and using our hands as really antenna,
yeah, yeah.
right?
And you're
Like in
building neural pathways.
absolutely.
Like, so the antenna and the neural pathways, you're increasing your capacity
Mm,
for nowness, presence, sensation.
yeah, that's such an interesting point, because I don't know if you hear this. I imagine you do, or some version of it, because I know I've heard this from clients over the years. I'm tired of making my grocery list when I'm having sex. Or
Hmm.
like looking at the ceiling, that comes in a lot of different forms. But
Yeah.
and I think that's what you're talking about. It's that presence.
Well, we've probably gotten into a pattern. We're going to
Mm,
do the sex.
yeah.
I'm going to do it. And hopefully it goes quick so I can get to my grocery list or, go to just do the thing because that's what I'm supposed to, or we're just not present. And it kind of means, and I know we talked about this before, as far as the like saying, I don't have a libido. It's like, it's not that you don't have a libido. You just don't like the sex you're being offered. So if you're doing grocery lists while you're engaging with your partner, you're probably bored and not engaged with what's happening, but you don't know what else to ask for. Because again, going back to the granularity, if I can be so in tune with what kind of granularity lights me up and brings me present, I can start to begin to make requests.
Absolutely, because we don't even know what we want,
Hmm.
right? It's like, that's great. But if I say, okay, well, what is it you don't want what you have, maybe, let's just say, in theory,
Hmm. Yeah.
as an exploration. Okay, what do you want? Blank.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I've often told the story of it. It seems to me, like in my experience, you're a young person, you have hormones. Let's say you're in your teens or 20s or whatever it is for you. Like when we all sort of get that flush of hormone, and
Yeah.
eroticism starts to kick in, and sexuality starts to kick in, and whatever age or whenever that comes for you, like you start in sexual activity. And then it just kind of sits there and just repeats over time.
Hmm.
And especially
Hmm.
like if you end up being with a person, let's say you're in a long-term relationship, it's likely, not always, but it's likely that however your sexual life started in that relationship, that's kind of how it keeps going,
Yeah.
unless you intentionally put energy into curiosity and
Yeah.
educating yourself on what's available out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then no
And that's
wonder we're bored after 25 years. Of course you are. You've been having the same
exactly.
sex for 20 years
It might not even take 25 years. It might be bored after 2 years.
or 2 months. I mean,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, um, Yeah, I just love this conversation so much. So,
Kind of a, maybe you're going the same place, but a tie into the blueprints, because it's like, if I try to discover, like, I don't know, what do I like? The blueprints created by Jaiya
mhm,
also create it's a framework of, so it's like the love languages, but it takes where the love language is left off to turn on. So like there's energetic,
mhm,
sensual, sexual, kinky, and shape shifter. So it's like those are different categories or types to explore. Like, what's energetic touch? How do we play
absolutely.
energetically? What's maybe there's kinky or sensual. And so it gives us permission to kind of be curious about where else can we play or experiment.
Absolutely. And just to give a little bit more context, the blueprints that you're speaking of are the erotic blueprints,
Yeah.
and they were developed by Jaya, who you
Hmm.
are a master trainer for
Yeah.
in the erotic blueprints. And
Hmm.
then I coached with Jaya, told that story already. Um, and so these blueprints are a way, like you said, they're kind of like the love languages, but it really does, for me, in my experience, like it really does help you get granular.
Yeah.
Right, when
Yeah.
we're looking, when we're asking the question, okay, yeah, that sounds great, but how? How do I do that? What do I do? I don't know. Where do I go? Where do I look? People often look at porn. Whatever. I mean, you get what you get, right? From porn, but that's not really education. And this
Well,
is
is that expanding, enhancing, or is it limiting? You know, for some people it can be expansive, like, oh my God, I never thought of doing that. And for
yep,
some people it's limiting, like oh, that's all it is that.
exactly. And it can make you feel a certain way about yourself or your relationship. Anyway, so but I view this conversation and the conversation about blueprints, and it's so much more. It is true education. So, like you said, the blueprints are energetic, sensual, sexual, kinky, and shapeshifter. Um, if you don't mind, like, can we dive a little bit deeper into the blueprints and give people uh, more knowledge about what this
Little
is?
bit, a
Yeah,
little bit, because I would like I would like to also like do a little bit about what sexological bodywork is and scar tissue remediation. But
totally.
for the
Absolutely.
blueprints, yeah, they do have like their superpowers and their shadows. And it's
Mm,
not to like categorize people or give you like, well, I'm energetic, so this, or oh no, I'm sexual, or yours. But it shows us where we're strong and where we can grow our capacity, and our partner or partners as well. So
mhm,
energetic, they can get overwhelmed sometimes, especially with the sexual, because sexuals are about like, let's get naked, let's do it, genitals, and that could overwhelm energetic. It's like, whoa, like you came at me too fast, and it's like I want to feel the distance and the tease and the anticipation, and so that, that's the superpower. But again, the shadow can be that they get a little bit overwhelmed, but they can also have energetic orgasms. They can, so there's a big range. For sensual, it's more contoured touch, or it's all the senses, like the lights are important, and the uh maybe having furry blankets, and the, all the senses, include all of that. Don't just run to sexual, or it's like, don't be too much in the energetic field. I want to feel the senses. So, and then sexual kind of went into that. It's like, let's just do it. It's easy, it's simple. Sometimes sexual, they use sex to relax instead of, can I down regulate first? And so again, then in each one, there's places where we can expand. Where is it limiting us, and where is it um, a pathway? And kinky is anything that's taboo for you. So what's kinky for you might not be kinky for me. It's just anything that's like, ooh, a little taboo. And of course there's always learn about that with safety, and safe words, and how to small chunks of exploring power dynamics or sensations, not jumping into anything too big too fast, but really playing in that. And shapeshifters, like, kind of being able to speak all the languages. But
mm.
sometimes the shadow of a shapeshifter is, sometimes they can chameleon to anyone else's desires. So I can play in anyone's sandbox. Well, what do you want to play? Where do you want to play today? So that's just kind of a quick overview of the blueprints there.
Yeah, thank you. And it really is a wonderful playground. And in working with the blueprints, I learned so much about myself, not only in the bedroom, but outside of the bedroom too. Like it really
Yes.
does go way beyond just intimacy and sexual acts, right?
Yeah.
And your partner, if you are partnered, it's wonderful to have this information about your partner because so many times once you get through that heat of the beginning of the relationship, whatever that is for you, and you kind of settle into like, okay, we're two humans living life and this is what we're up. And then especially if you're in long-term relationships and then you turn around and look at each other like, oh, really? You again? You know, it
Yeah.
really does help to re-spark and give you new education and information about each other. So you're like, oh my God, no shit. No wonder I've
Yeah.
never liked that. You know, it's like, of course.
Yeah.
And then you can really
Yeah.
start to play and it just enlivens that part of the relationship so much which can then give new information and new guidance for the rest of the relationship as well. So it
Yeah.
really does have long tentacles
It
of where this
does.
stuff reaches. It's
Yes.
fantastic work. So you also mentioned that you wanted to talk about scar tissue remediation and something else. So yeah, so
Sexological body work.
sexological body work. So
Yes.
yeah, let's go there.
Yeah, because it's such a unique now in our certification of blueprint coaching, there's no touch involved. So when I
Right.
move into sexological body work, that's a whole different training and certification. And so that
Mhm.
includes touching the whole body. And that's what I love about that, because that's where it's kind of tied to scar tissue remediation, because we can't touch someone's body without touching their history, without
Mm,
touching, it's all stored in the body. And so,
mm,
especially because touch in this field includes pleasure, includes the pelvis, we can discover what's stored there, what patterns and behaviors and beliefs, which can be looked at as a scar, emotionally scarred or biochemically scarred, or all these patterns that show up in our body. So that's why, another one of my teachers, Ellen Heed, she talks about seen and unseen healing, because
mm.
there's the seen scars. When people think about scars, it's like, an incision from surgery or, something like that. So that's the seen aspect. But then there's the unseen too, of things that are being held, tensions and patterns and fears stored in our bodies. So they kind of overlap, but they're definitely trauma informed, and that's where we really get to look not just the blueprints, but um, patterns that might be stuck in our bodies.
You know, that's one of the reasons that I think this work is so important and so necessary. And I've said this for a couple of years now to anyone who will listen, but uh, I can speak and language things. I meaning any of us, right? Any human. You can speak and language things and therapize things and analyze things and use my intellectual ability and my brain to work all sorts of twisty turny things. But when you start working with the body, that's where the magic is, and the body doesn't lie.
Exactly.
My brain will play tricks on me constantly. Like in my mind, I can make up all sorts of stories about all
And
sorts of
the
things.
right answers.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yes. This is what oh yes, this is the work I'm doing. But the body doesn't lie.
Yeah.
And my first experience with sexological body work, I remember sitting up on the table at the end of a day, spending nude on a table the entire day, and sitting up at the end of the day sobbing.
Yeah.
I was like, why aren't we doing this? Every woman I know needs this work. This is healthcare.
Yes.
What you beautiful humans are doing is true health care, in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like what we were speaking to before about you can't have true wellness unless we talk about sexual wellness. So
Yeah. And to have our whole body, including genitals and pelvis,
Mm-hmm.
just hold witness and presence. And, a lot of times, especially as women, anytime our genitals are involved or our pelvis, even if it's the medical industry, we got to do the thing. We got to, even the speculum and pull the baby out, or, just like what goes on during surgeries and procedures. And it's crazy. And then even with lovers, it's, an agenda, or the way I touch myself, it's an agenda. So to
Mm-hmm.
just slow down and be with the body and listen to her with no agenda. And when I work, with the body, I'm not there's nothing between us. So you get to just be with your body and be witnessed and held and see what wants to arise.
Mm. Say more, but that was beautiful. And I really want people to take that in. What would it be like to have nothing in between you and a facilitator, or you and yourself, and slow down and feel what it feels like to be in your own body?
And love her just the way she is.
What a radical act.
Yes. Even if she's numb, she's painful, she's hurt, she's sad, she's angry. Uh, Beautiful.
Yeah, that's so great too, because what if it's all allowed? Because I think we do have that programming. I know certainly I've had it, like, well, if I'm numb, that's wrong. I'm broken.
Yeah.
If there's pain, then there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. If there's too much sensation, well, then I'm too much. I need to tamp myself down. Right. So
Mhm.
how does that fit into this field and in this work? Like if someone is thinking like, I'm wrong, I'm bad, I'm broken, how do you work with that?
Yeah. Well, it's always comes down to nervous system. There's a little bit of geekery behind it as far as the nervous system education. You
Mm,
know, my body or our bodies have been responding very intelligently for protection. So it's not broken. Thank you. You had to shut down. You had to become numb. You had to fight or free, any of the responses that our body has to make in protection. And now it's like, how can we thaw that, thaw it, unravel it, witness it and love it first, not trying to change, not coming at anything like you need to change. Let's fix and change. Let's just be with. The body knows how to move towards wholeness. We don't have
mm,
to fix it. We don't have to change it. But we can look at what are the responses that the nervous system is making that don't have to be there. They can come to a place of safety, of connection, and safety first, and then inviting other um, activation or arousal.
sure. So coming to a place of relative safety, we'll call it. What
Safe
does
enough
that
is what we
safe
say.
enough? Yeah, yeah, right. So is there an example that you can give, or like a take home exercise for lack of a better word, to kind of to give an example of what this could look like? Let's say I'm at home and I'm interested in this work, and I'm wanting to experiment with my own body and my own self. Um, what's something that I can do that can walk me down this path towards safe enough, so that I can then be present enough with
Hmm.
myself, so that then I can be present with someone else and even possibly have a shot of receiving pleasure.
Yeah. Yes. So for your own practice, first you could be sitting up, you could be lying wherever you're comfortable. Maybe a hand on your And maybe having a hand on your genitals is even too much. Maybe it's just your heart at first. And feeling your breath. Feeling what comes up when I just stay in my body. And then maybe having a hand on genitals. And can you feel the heat? Can I be with that heat? Can I breathe, feel the breath, the connection between my heart and genitals? If I were to press a little bit, what do I notice? Can I feel blood flowing? Or do I feel contract, do I contract out, just what's arising? A body reveal, just practicing body reveals. And breathing, always going back to breathing. And especially if you can look at your vulva and explore and maybe do some touch and notice how she changes when she becomes a little bit more blood flow or more engorgement. So it just depends on where you're at. I mean, sometimes going right to genitals or looking at genitals is too much. Because like you said, first, just can I be present to my breath? So it's titration. Depending on where your comfort zone is, where your safety is, so sometimes you like to just jump right to here. It's like, it's going to shut someone down right away. So, starting out with safety is generally like when I think about the back of my body, I think of my sacrum, connecting it to the earth and breathing and just feeling my connection to the earth. And then slowly layering in, whether it's the breathing or the heart or the vulva, or looking at your vulva.
So good. So good. I even would recommend this I would recommend this type of exercise for anyone. And even if someone's feels like they're very sexually progressive, or like, oh, I've got that, I'm all good with all the things and body and all that, I still highly recommend slowing down and noticing exactly what you were just talking about.
That's the hardest part. That's the most vulnerable, slowing down. Because we can do sex. We can do it. We know how to do it. We can, we're used to, that can be distracting. All this is so distracting. That's why we want to just get to the orgasm or do the things, because I don't want to be left with what I really feel and notice. And so recently I had a couple, and I showed them, and there was a practice that I gave them and showed them on the video, and they did. And the guy, he was like, "Oh, we're beyond," just like you were saying, no, we're, we need something, we're beyond that. We need, that's a little too elementary for us. And the woman was like, yes, she's like, I relate to that. Like, this is what I need. This is so, yeah. It's not about learning more things. The difficult part is the slowing down. Even for me, I mean, I live in this world, but to slow down and be with what is, and just, yeah, that's work.
It is, and it's where that's where the information is.
Yeah.
Like, our bodies are information systems, and if it's noisy in there, we can't hear the body's wisdom.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and that's kind of the point. And it kind of is leading me to my next question, which is, why is this important? Why is pleasure important? Why is this conversation important?
Yeah. It's almost an act of rebellion. It could seem like frivolous because I hope I don't offend people here, but it's almost a political view, or the dominant culture that doesn't. I mean, I can't even advertise the work that I do. They censor pleasure, sex. It's like, we don't want people to have body autonomy and know their bodies. And like, if we can keep them in shame and judgment and rules, and then we can control them. And even sex is, this is another whole podcast.
I know. We totally can go down that road. Like a truly sexually alive woman, a powerfully sexually alive woman, outside of the over sexualization of the female, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a truly erotically, powerfully alive woman is dangerous to dominant
Yeah,
culture. Sorry,
I
I
know
said it.
my
I mean,
boundaries. Yeah, and I know what I want, and I can have compassion for others too, and I can,
sure,
you know,
absolutely.
so, and especially there's so much news for people that are listening and paying attention to everything that's happening. That's in our cells. It's
Yeah.
clogging us. It's like, yes, there's shit happening out there, but pleasure in my body and presence is my way of contributing to the world. And then when I go out into the world and I can be centered and grounded and present, it's like, wow, what are you doing? That's, how is your life there? How do I get a little of what you have? It's like, come to your body.
Yeah. It's
Have
that
pleasure.
it's inner radiance, right? Pleasure is healing, and it
Yeah.
infuses our cells with light. I mean, like with energy and with light, and and that carries, like you said, that carries through the rest of your life. Like you walk out the door and go to the grocery store, you feel different when you can contact your pleasure.
Yeah. And another whole podcast some other time too, but it is spirituality too. It is connection to the bigger divinity that's
1000%.
out there.
Yes.
So when we get confused about who's in charge or what all
Hmm.
this is, it's like it's all in us.
Mm.
When I can connect to my pleasure and my body, that sexuality, spirituality,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah, that's that's another thing that I have found in this work that was an unexpected result
Mhm.
is the direct correlation with sexuality and spirituality. It is sacred. Like pleasure is sacred. It is a
Yeah.
sacred act. You can, with yourself or with another, especially in relationship, really create magic. I mean, you
Mhm.
can create states of consciousness that are altered when you can truly connect in that way, in that
Yeah.
sort of union. And
Yeah.
it's phenomenal, right? It goes way beyond just what you were talking about before of doing sex. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so vast, and we just
Yeah.
don't know because we're never told.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't get curious sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
So curiosity is
Mm,
key. Permission and curiosity and love.
yeah. So we'll go ahead and wrap up this conversation. I have a feeling there might be more because we
I
opened
think we
some
just
doors
listed
here.
4 other podcasts there.
We could talk about 700 more things.
Yeah.
Um, and I just loved talking to you anyway.
Yes.
Uh, but
Love
what
discussion.
is, yeah, what if you were to give a permission slip right now
Mm.
to a woman who's listening, who's somewhere in the middle of her life, whatever that means? Not that we need permission, right? But as an invitation, permission
Yeah.
as an invitation, what would that be?
Make more asks for
Mm,
you, not pleasing other people, but what's an ask I can make? What desire do I have? Even it's like, would you get me a glass of water? Something that it's like my desires are important, or whether it's touch. So what asks can I make?
mm, that's so good.
And yeah, and then even with myself, how can I connect to my pleasure, generate my own pleasure? It's not outside of me. How can I cultivate and generate that in my own body?
Mm. And there really is no place you can't go in that. Like even with ourselves, like there are no rules.
Yeah,
I can create pleasure however I want, whatever's true for me. Doesn't have to
yeah.
look like what anybody else thinks.
And keep it in the subtleties and the
Yeah,
granularities.
yeah,
Doesn't have to be big or huge. Slowing down.
Yeah, last thing, I promise.
Okay. No, this is awesome.
That's one of the things that I have learned recently so much about, because my own programming, it was all about like, well, if it's not big and huge, then it doesn't count,
Mm-hmm.
right? And loud
Yeah.
and right? Then it doesn't count. And what I'm finding is exactly what you're saying, like that slowing down, and the true magic and the juice is quiet, and it's in the
Yes.
subtleties and the nuance of being able to feel the slightest. I'm putting my hands on my inner palm right now,
And I'm breathing.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Just that slightest little thing, like that's where the juice is. It doesn't have to be big.
Yeah.
Mm,
And that's already the escape from all the stuff out there. It's just
yeah.
the beauty of that.
Mm, mhm, mm.
Yeah.
Connie, thank you so much.
Angie, thank you for inviting me. Because I know we were talking before, like, I do bodies, I don't like words. It's hard for me to talk about it, but talking with you is easy. So we did it.
Oh, I know. It's so good. And bodies are amazing, and they should be touched
Yeah.
respectfully, safely, obviously. But yeah, that's where the magic is, and that's where the wisdom is. So let's not
Yeah.
ignore it. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Connie, thank you again. I'm sure I will see you soon.
Yes, especially since we both live in Boulder. Let's
Yeah.
go hiking.
Yes, definitely. All right, Connie, I'll see you
Thank
soon.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye, Angie.
Bye. Ooh, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Connie. I have a feeling there will be more, because this topic has so much depth and vastness to explore. Our sexuality and eros hold so much of who we are, and is where everything about who we are is exposed. It's really the deepest work that I've found. You can find more about Connie on her website, which I will link in the show notes. And once again, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your shows. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel if you also want to see these conversations. Share with your friends and follow me, Angie.bird, on Instagram. This will help the show gain momentum and help our other sisters out here who are also looking to bring some magic and mayhem into their lives as well. See you soon.